Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Sport for Change Dialogues. This platform has been designed to curate and showcase exemplary stories, interventions, and campaigns narrated by change makers who are battling it out in the trenches themselves to improve societal outcomes through sport. And we are partial to sport, but with other tools as well in some form. In recent times, all of us know some of these stories have been nothing short but just sheer courage and trial by the fire, as they say. And for the very first episode of Sport for Change Dialogues, our special guest today is Annie George. Hello, Annie. Annie is the Sustainable Development Leader at Decathlon, and in this role, she has been leading Decathlon's community initiatives and social outreach programs. Decathlon, as you know, is one of the world's leading sports goods retailer. Just a quick, our objective with the time today for next 40 odd minutes is to explore the notions of community development and sustainability through the lens of Decathlon, since we have Annie with us, which Decathlon, as you know, has a very unique position of all for or standing all for sport. Literally speaking, that's one of their key platforms as well. And we would like to dig deeper into the insights from some of their programs that they've implemented, both from the insights they have from successes and spectacular failures as well in what they've been trying to do from this. Those of you who are joining live for this session, the format may not allow us to open it up for questions later, but we will be sharing our email IDs. And if there are any burning questions, please mail them out to us directly. So all in all, it promises to be a riveting session. So buckle up your seatbelts and enjoy the ride. And let me start by welcoming Annie again to Sport for Change Dialogues. Annie, thank you for being here.
Pleasure is all mine, Parminder. I'm very happy and honored and humbled actually to be your first guest. And we all know what Sport Village has been doing, and it's a long association. But super happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So let me just start, just warm the context up, start a bit from your personal journey. I know that you have a background in communication. So what got you into development space? Let's just start maybe for everybody to get to know you a little better from that standpoint.
You're saying that you would like to know why I am in sustainable development?
What prompted and what were the triggers that got you into the whole social outreach part or development space?
Okay, it's actually a very long journey, but I'll just try to, see if I can keep it short. And if I'm really digressing, you can tell me.
Sure.
So I think in the introduction, I did share that I have a bit of a defense background. So my childhood was in National Defense Academy in Khatkwasla. And anybody who's been in the defense, you know the kind of space you have, the kind of access you have when it comes to environment. And given the time that I was a child, we didn't have a lot of wastage around us. We used to walk instead of, commuting with car or scooter. You had gardens around for, anything that you really wanted to throw. And there was really, the pollution level, you could say, was not existing. And that was the first 15 years of my life, So that's something that I always kept with me. And sport was super accessible. There was really no cost to it. And it was not a competitive sport, but it was sport as a lifestyle. You wanted to go swimming, you wanted to go up the hill, you wanted to climb up the tree, you wanted to walk somewhere, it was all there. Then as I grew up, so that was my, strong connect with sport. And then as I grew up, when I was hitting maturity, when I just became an adult, Latur happened, if you remember the Latur earthquake.
Yes.
And I had the opportunity of associating, with a mission who was doing some work in a village called Dapegaon. And, so that was my chance of connecting with education, because they wanted to start a school. And at that point, I kind of also connected with how it is not easy to have, basic education accessible to everybody. and I still am associated with the school. So that was the sport and education part of it. And it just, it was in my formative years. So it was something that I said that, this is something that should be available to everybody. It was as simple as that. And then life happened. And then somewhere along the line, when I was kind of deciding about a change in career, and that was the time when I said that I would like to see what I can do in sport. And that was I was already in an organization that had a connect with sport, but then I said, like, okay, if I want to be at grassroots level, where could I go? And decathlon happened, and but that was again the time when nobody knew what decathlon was, and I had no clue, that the offers that they were doing. I mean, basically, making sport accessible. It is not something that anybody around me knew. And I made this trip to Bangalore and I saw what they were doing and totally fell in love. And I said, okay, this is a place I would like to be. And as you said, I initially, when I started the journey with communication. But then I gravitated towards social engagements. We were not, CSR was not there. We really didn't need to do because we were mandated. But we said, like, what is it that we can do beyond? And people in decathlon, I mean, we are all people who have joined the company because there is a passion or there is an interest with sport, and you really want to see what you could do or how you could offer. And so I was connected with the initial engagement was a little bit more with this social aspect, where we were saying that, okay, can we see what we could do beyond just having our playgrounds available? And then by about 2015, 2016 was the time when, the focus on environmental access became very strong with the Paris Agreement. And Decathlon also being the kind of organization, and also because, we are from France, there was this whole focus or ambition for us as a company to see how we could also reduce our impact on the environment. And then so there were a lot of opportunities coming in because we were in India. We are actually very integrated. So we design, there are certain sport that we are actually building in India. We design totally for India, which is like cricket. We also produce in India. We have the warehouses and we have the retail. So being so integrated, there was a lot of work to do. And we said, okay, we need to now start working on ensuring we develop in a more sustainable manner, reduce our environmental footprint as well. So when the opportunity came up, it was very natural and very organic for me to say that, if there is, and, amongst the players who were eager, I was one of them. And from the last 3 years, I have been leading the Sustainable Development Project for India.
Brilliant. Thanks.
That's how it happened.
No, I think very interesting. No, in fact, I'm not sure if you recall, but I remember first meeting back in 2016, 17 at your store, I think by the Bangalore airport. I vividly remember at that time your valiant attempts to get children from neighboring villages to access playgrounds, high quality sporting experience at your stores. So, and I'm sure over time it graduated to deeper engagement with the community as we go. But that actually brings me to my next question, and very important one at that. In fact, a lot has been said about putting purpose before profit in recent times, corporate business context. Basically, how do you align your CSR or social programs with the core purpose of the business, not just to the profits, operational gains, or reputational management? And most businesses that I know have struggled with this alignment one way or the other. It'd be, I think, useful to know how Decathlon approaches sustainability and how are you aligning your social outreach, whether it is a community programs or employability, to the core purpose of business, even as you scale your retail footprint operations across the country. And you're unique as you are a sports business, and you also use sport to drive sustainability and the social outreach. So I think it'll be good to know how you're approaching this whole framework.
I think what I'll try to do is, because when you also mentioned CSR, social sustainability. So sustainability for me is holistic. It is planet, people, profit. And even for Decathlon, as I mentioned, the trigger or the impulse, with Greta as well, came in around, 2016, 2017. There was this major acceleration that was happening, and a lot of pressure coming in, even from bottom up, saying that what are we as an organization doing? for sustainability. But I'll also try to make sure that we don't digress too much because the topic today is sport for change. Um, um, but to say that how are we driving the entire thing, I think we can say it's the culture. That is something that I will have to bring in because we have always, for the past 40, 45 years, we've been a very human organization. We are an organization that actually gives a lot of responsibility to people. And in fact, I'll also tell a little story about Michel Leclerc, who's the founder of Decathlon. When he formed Decathlon, he was initially working in Auchan, and when he founded Decathlon, it was just by chance that he founded a sports company. It could have been anything else, but thanks to grateful that he decided to do sport. But when he did it, one of his first things were about how we could offer opportunity for people to take up more responsibility. It was more on that. It was more about how people can take up bigger responsibility, how people could get the opportunity, more about autonomy. It's always been people centric. And as I said that, Decathlon is pretty much everybody who works over here is connected with sport. So it's more about a sport user to a sport user. It's by a sport user for a sport user. We have that kind of a connection. So as far as people was concerned, it was always a big part of our mindset. And profit is normal because without that, then it's a little difficult to be in so many countries and kind of make it so accessible. Then the environmental or the planet part of it is something that came on very strongly in the last I think about 5 to 6 years. And we said that no, we know that we have a responsibility to ensure that we reduce our emissions and we reduce our impact on the planet. So the approach, it's been quite gradual, but it was always people and profit, and now we are also focusing more, if not as much, on planet as well. That is one part of it. So our purpose used to be to make sport accessible to the many. Now it is to do it sustainably. So yeah, I mean, it's always been about making sport accessible, and then we said, we have to do it sustainably. So yes, I think the approach of people, planet, profit is something that we are, very, very conscious of today. It's there in pretty much all the challenges that we do and the strategies that we are trying to implement. And in fact, it would be interesting for you to know that we are also scored on that. Initially a country would be about the turnover they make or the profit that they make or the number of teammates they have or the products that they sell. Today it's also about the access or the actions that and impact that we are having on planet, people, profit. But also I think I'll say, Parminder, sustainability has been one big factor, but pretty much 17 years ago was the time when we started working in the community. And this was with the Decathlon Foundation, and the foundation has been there in about more than 50 countries today. And we have more than 500 projects. And in India, we've been present since 1999, actually. The retail started much later, but we did have a lot of projects even that point in time. And our projects have also been related with people. So when anybody wants to do a project, it is actually a teammate who says that, I would like to do this project because I want to see if I could contribute to this particular community. And then they make a pitch. And when they make a pitch, we say, okay, what's the kind of budget you're looking at? What's the kind of timeline you're looking at? And then they do the project. So the initial community engagements were there, a little before we became more formalized about, we need to ensure planet, people access in our strategy.
Right. So that gives us a good start. And I think, and let me just pick a couple of points that you mentioned. In fact, one of the things which are important for all of us who are doing work in the society, one is the inclusion part,
Yep.
Whether it is, you mentioned privileged few versus everybody, or it is gender, So I think the inclusion is critical from social programming standpoint. So just maybe, you mentioned about communities, schools as part of your people piece. And so just wanted to maybe delve a little deeper about specific programs that you have been running um, with the communities that you have, that you support right now. Also, maybe given that Decathlon has a very, very long experience globally compared to your, I think, fairly young in India from that standpoint. Have there been any stories that you have tried to translate back into the country? So that's a segue from the same question of what we are trying right now and what also you're translating from global context to Indian. It may be useful to know about that as well.
Okay, so whether it is in India or globally, we kind of the frame is same.
Okay.
It is, as you said, sport for inclusion, sport as opportunity. We connect with education as well as skills. So ideally the frame is around this. It is sport because we are there are not too many organizations that use this tool and are able to make the contribution. So there have been a lot of deliberations, should we go beyond, but we said okay, it makes a lot of sense in giving back with what we have got, and the sport has given us a lot. So what is it that we could probably offer? So even if you look at Italy, they actually have a wheelchair basketball initiation. So it could be sport for differently abled. In Morocco, there have been stories. There was a very good initiative about getting some girls to go to school because of the distance. We donated some cycles. So it was again sport for education. So we have the context remains the same. In France, there are a lot of football related program with the migrants. So in India, we are working. One of our oldest program or community program is from Calcutta. So we kind of engage with an NGO, and they work in a community, and we see how we could contribute to them. Um, um, we try not to only be sponsors. We want to be a little bit more involved, which is not something which sometimes people like, but because it's more about ensuring that the values are aligned, and the impact that we're looking at is same. So it's normally sport, inclusion, livelihood, and education. And then the choice, like in India, we have made a selection. It was again co-written with different teams. We do a lot of this co-working thing, and I think you've also experienced. We involve everybody to see how they can what is it that they would like us to do. So one of the couple of the activities that we decided on was to work with children, because we also felt that while we have over 80 stores across the country, and then we have warehouses, and also we work with suppliers. Not everybody around our stores walk into our stores. So we said that there seems to be a lot of children who don't, either they have a lot of inhibitions, or there is not a lot of maturity, awareness. Sometimes maybe the store just looks like a warehouse, and they don't want to, they don't think it's a store. But we also wanted to see how we could break that barrier and get them into the store. So in India, children was one of them, and we said we all know that the government schools are not very well equipped. Not all of them are. Some of them, the model schools are quite interesting, but not all of them are equipped with physical educator, physical classes, or doing sport. And the second one we said is that we see a lot of skilling program or youth skilling is something of a challenge. And we kind of felt that there were a lot of children or youth who were interested in sport, but were not able to crack that employability. They were not able to crack interviews or get into mainstream. So we said, okay, how is that possible? So then again, we kind of decided to work in this sphere of, and again, both of them are not pure. I mean, they're not actually CSR engagements. So the interesting part is that the city or the store is willing to make that investment on some of the youth, who then kind of have a journey with us for about 2 years. After that, they could decide to work with us, or they could decide to uh, move elsewhere.
Great. So are there any stories? Because when I walk into a Decathlon store and I see these very, very knowledgeable, passionate um, people, teams who manage your stores. Are there any, so are you saying that there are people, kids from this program that you run who actually graduate to become paid employees of Decathlon? Is that the intent as well?
Yes, yes. In fact, our oldest program would have started, we did do a lot of trial and error. And as we said, that it was not pure CSR mandate. And, it was not because we had to, we just wanted to see in case if it was possible for us to integrate some of the youth from the community and see how the programs could be built. So the oldest program would be, I think we started somewhere in 2012, 2013. And if I'm not, there are a couple of people since that time as well. So while the initial program was in Calcutta, then about 3 years ago, we started another program in Bangalore. And actually this year, starting this year, we were all set to actually start another program in Delhi. But I mean, that is kind of put on hold right now. So the children who have joined us from Calcutta or who joined the program in Calcutta actually have even gone to different cities. So it's not necessary that they have stayed back in Calcutta. There are some who have gone to Indore. There's some who've gone to Lucknow. There's some who've gone to Delhi. Some even who have come to Bangalore. So now they are on mobility. So one thing, just earlier we were just exchanging. He said, if you look at some of these youth who came in as youth, today have actually got married and have their children. So it's kind of been quite fulfilling to know that they have also managed to make a life. Not just professionally, but also develop on their personal fronts, Yeah, so yeah, we do have these kind of stories.
Brilliant. I mean, that's really, so in fact, that also begs the question, and I had that in mind to ask you, a lot of corporates and even NGOs, implementing partners worry about the idea of impact that they might make, or how do you measure impact, whether it is in the short term or long term change that you're looking at. So clearly, I think the idea of employability and having some of these kids who become youth and work with you is one great example of that. But do you have a internal framework rubric? How do you see, how do you measure the change that you are trying to bring in communities and or schools or other programs that you have?
Yeah, so if you're talking about a dream, obviously we would have liked to see the sport for school children integrating into an employability program, and then them at the end of the day, working or being employed with Decathlon. For now, I wouldn't say both of them are very well connected, because it's the children that we engage with are very young, so they are in the age group of probably 11 and 12. And the employability youth are normally in the age of 15 and 16 and 17. Now we are also looking at employability in the age group, who have completed their education but have still not been able to find skills and are not equipped. So we're increasing that age group. So that journey, I'm not so sure, but of course, as a dream, why not? You kind of adopt a school, and then the child passes out of 10th, and then immediately joins the employability program, and then starts a journey in Decathlon, and probably even goes on to finish his graduation. And so why not look at something like that? But I wouldn't, at this kind of an example, I wouldn't have in an absolute term, but I do have one example. I remember in Whitefield, we had some youth who were from the community and who used to come to Whitefield. They were not part of any program, but they would keep coming to Whitefield and play on our play field. And they were also engaged with, they were exchanging with some of the teammates. The teammate today is actually he went on to Chennai, and now what I just understood is they were very good runners. These boys were very good runners. So what we would do is we would sponsor them for running. So they would and buy these kits and all. It was no program. It was just a goodwill of somebody in the store who wanted to do something like that. And today, one or two of them have actually joined the Banagatta store. So so you do have these kind of, there are many local stories, and because each of them are doing it in their own way, there are many stories, which always, and every teammate or every store leader will have some story to share.
Right. No, I think this is an important facet of, especially in sports, as you know, most of the people that or kids who set out to become athletes at some point will be back looking for a career in some form or the other, because the success percentage is very, very low in exceeding at the highest level. So if there is a way for them to, but they are enthusiastic about sport, and if there are options to engage in some form, they want to stay engaged there. So this is a great gratifying story that they have, that you're running this program, and as the program scales, there'll be more and more kids who may find employment where their heart is. So, which is great to know. And the other thing I want to check with you, given that in recent times we all have been struggling, given COVID pandemic related issues, to stay afloat, and in fact have changed dramatically in terms of both at business front on how we do the profit piece, and as well as on the social programming, social outreach front, and how we engage some of our beneficiaries or people that we are worried about. So any stories from your side and how you've had to change, played by the year, last couple of years, anything that is insightful, or any failures that you saw in some form. But I would be more interested in any one of the things that you think will stay on, and those were the learnings and pieces from which I think you think will stay on for years to come now, regardless of COVID, after having gone through this.
So I think, let me just see if I can. Challenges, of course, have been the fact that we had to put the program that we were very excited to launch a year back on hold. In fact, we built it with you. It was something that we were doing for a very long time. And I wouldn't say that's not going to happen, but that's something now we have to put on hold, and hopefully we would be able to do it next year. There are many interesting things that did happen. So the way we engaged with people were, of course, it was, COVID. This is an impact that everybody had. You had to stop your own programs, and then you had to kind of figure out what else you could do. And it was, of course, right. So one of the most interesting one, and you have also showed it in the loop that you were playing, was a product of ours, Easy Breathe. That's an innovation product. It is our IP. It is an innovation product. It's actually a snorkeling mask. And when COVID started, and we heard what was happening in Europe, and especially in Italy and Spain, this was one product that was immediately taken and adapted. So there were some people who made some. So the IP was with us. So they just asked us, in case if we can let them know, open the design, and figure out how it can be adopted. And then it was, thousands and thousands of masks were used as PPE, even ventilators, and even for respiration, for the I think the oxygen, but mostly for PPE and the ventilator for the first in Europe. And then we did the same thing in India as well. So here also different hospitals, while they didn't use it as ventilators, they used it as PPE. But I think what is interesting was to know that something that we have designed, and which was actually the intention was something very different, but could be, in a crisis, adapted immediately, and it could actually save many lives and be useful to, as we say, people. So that was one thing. And so it also just says that, the products that we could have, that we make for one purpose could also be utilized. We're not medical specialists, but that was something which is very interesting. One of the other challenges was we tried to adopt, or try to change the way we do the Sport for School Children program digitally. And we did come up with the program. We came up with different modules, and we said, okay, this is how big planning, and we said, okay, this is how we will do it. Create these kind of WhatsApp groups, and talk to the teachers, and then. But it was not something which went through at all. It was. It's not possible. You can say whatever you want to say about the digital transformation, for a few, but not for the many. And probably it's also not something that kind of a constraint. We need to see how to shift it out. You have to get children to the playground. You have to get people to an open space. So that is something also what I would think important. The other thing is that all the NGOs that we associated with were also NGOs who we normally associate with for sport. So normally our engagement with them is for sport, but all of them had started working in their community. So whether it was to distribute some ration, whether it was to distribute some blankets, whether it was to give some kind of a shelter. There was this hurricane, I think, that had happened in Calcutta. So to rebuild houses. So these were all NGOs that we actually associated, we normally associate because of sports and the development activities that we do. But all of them changed their course and came through basically for people. So that was something I think that's here to stay. So whether but I think it's also the mindset and the values that sport brings, and that's also one of the reasons why we say that sport gives a lot. There's a lot that sport offers.
Sure. No, thanks. That was, I think, very frank in terms of what worked and what didn't work for you from a, and this digital programming is a tough ask, and especially in a physical area like sport, we ourselves have experience. It's not easy. And we need to prioritize on what digital can be used for and what can only be done by physical and maybe use both in some way to close the loop in some form. So that brings us to the last point that I had, at least in my list. It was any counterintuitive or half dopey predictions that you think you could make, especially when it comes to sport and using sport as a tool to drive change in next 2-3 years? I mean, if let's say we were to have this session again after a year or two, what would we be discussing at that time?
Yeah, Parminder, like you, I am a hardcore optimist about sports, and I am a beneficiary from sports. I mean, but I'm somehow, yeah, it was a little disappointing when this whole pandemic happened. And there was not a lot of focus or attention given to sport or physical fitness, physical activities. But I was a little surprised because a lot of developed countries were talking about how you need to be active, and WHO had given out this whole thing that, minimum 150 minutes, every adult should be doing this, every child should be doing this, and these are the kind of activities that you can do. And a lot of people around me were managing with a family in a small, one room hall as well, because the initial pandemic was a lockdown and you were not able to go out, and they managed to do it. So it's not impossible. I was a little surprised, that we were not talking more about how possibly, sport and physical activities can contribute towards health, mental health and physical health. So I think that is something, some kind of a gap. So yes, there is one aspect when Olympic happens, we get very happy about, winning. This year was the best for India, both in the Paralympic and the Olympic. But that is basically the consequence of, a good program that you have at grassroots level. Ideally, what for decathlon also, that's also the reason why we have said many, because we don't talk about, initially it was sport for all for sport. And then it was about making sport accessible to everyone. But then we said the people who can afford and the people who are professionals don't need our support, and people who are just looking for very cheap products, again, don't need our support. But then you have this whole gamut of other people who need it, and it is also not, it's not excellence, it's not necessarily excellence will happen, but what you need to have is a culture, a mindset, a lifestyle where you have physical activity. Yoga is a big thing. It's very easily accessible information, whichever language you want, that is available. Walking doesn't take a lot of, you don't need a lot of equipment and gears for that. So I think this sport for development, as I said, everybody knows it contributes, it brings, a lot to an individual. Sport for excellence, everybody celebrates. But I think sport for everybody is also something, where we talk about just physical activity, physical engagement, to have a healthier mindset, a healthier lifestyle, a healthier, I'm not saying that it's going to cure illnesses, but I'm just saying that is, I think, something that we could focus on. And you did say about the digital, because that for me was a big disappointment. We all talk about transformation and how the world is going to change. I don't think, probably a hybrid and in some way or the other. But I'm saying there's a lot of talk about the technology and shift. Yes, it'll happen. But, I mean, for sport, I think you need to be on the ground and, you can't be doing it on a screen.
Yeah, I think this point that you made on the excellence program typically is highly visible, and I think most of us, in fact, even if you look at the impact or the outcomes, it is very easy to showcase a podium finish. Then that you worked with these many children, use sport to make them little better versions of themselves than they were earlier. So do you have a challenge dealing with this conundrum of going all for sports excellence, easier to let's say in quotes, reputation management or getting a business case for the intervention you may be running versus this all-inclusive context that you run currently? Do you struggle with this creative stress in terms of where to put your attention, time, energy?
Yeah, you mentioned about impact even earlier, and I didn't
Yeah.
address it. Very difficult. It's very difficult. Yes, as you said, even when I mentioned about some of the outcomes, these are all success stories of where somebody has won a gold medal, and yes, you want to see them on the podium. But as I said, that is going to be the consequence of many other things that are falling in place and having. So I think it's a struggle to figure out where we started and what is the impact. I guess there are a lot of spaces where you can't, and not in 6 months, and not in 1 year, and not in 2 years. So it's a challenge that we have with ourselves as well when we say that what's the impact, and just after that you wonder like what is the impact and how can you change something within 6 months or 1 year. But yes, you should be demanding about impact because you don't want to have the chalta hai, kind of attitude where you say that it's not going to happen or you can't see it or it's not something that we can work now. But you should be demanding, but probably also have some kind of a more realistic timeline on the impact part of it. But I think the impact part of it will also be, as we say that if children were to come to school, if they actually get better in whatever they have decided to take up, or if you're talking about as a society, a preventive, instead of going to hospitals, you have a healthier, um, you know, citizens. I mean, so I think impact could be also translated in different ways. The healthier the society, that they are active. So probably you can, but yes, it's difficult. But yes, you need to have some kind of a demand from your programs. Probably not a 6 month, 1 year, but you need to have some kind of a demand.
Sure. So thanks. So I think that brings me to the end of at least my list of questions. And the key takeaways, just to summarize some, I think, key points that first, of course, is aligning the purpose with the profit. I think that's one example of how you are, how you have been at least successfully doing it in context of sport. Second, of course, is long-term change, the whole employability loop where of course, the vision is there, and how do you now connect the dots to make it happen in some form? And third, of course, is that digital transformation or bringing about a single pony thing doesn't work. It has to be a combination of multiple things for change to happen, not pure physical or digital in some context. So these were, I think, great points that I at least personally made a note of. So great. Thank you so much, Annie, for such an absorbing session, and more powers to you and Decathlon for making sport accessible to everyone, regardless of their social status, gender, ability, and so on. And thank you once again for being on the show, and have a good weekend to you and to all of the audience as well.
Thank you, Parminder.